Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Pat Voss. This is the Honesty Podcast. You know me. You can find me on YouTube for my vlog series Monday through Friday. And, of course, you can catch my interview series like this one only on patreon.com/honestypodcast. So if you're watching this on Patreon, thank you so much for becoming a patron. It's only $1 an episode. And I put out 8 pieces of content every single month. So $8 a month is not a huge commitment. And obviously, if you go up in better tiers, other than $1 an episode, you go to 3 to 5 to 10 to 20, whichever. That also increases your benefits of joining Patreon under my patronage, because what that does is I can send free merchandise out. We can do one-on-one sessions for social media. We can make sure that you will have podcast episodes that are only available to you as you work up the tiers. But today, let's focus on this Saturday. This Saturday is an interview special Saturday with my buddy Matt. He does a Periscope show every other day. But to get more into it, first off, Matt, how you doing?
What's up? How you doing? How you doing, bro? How you doing?
I'm good. And again, and I'll say this before we really get started on this, because I've said it before on your show, I love the flag in the background. And so Matt, for anybody out there in Honesty Podcast land that doesn't already know who you are or doesn't follow my Honesty_podcast Periscope page that follows your page, what is it that you do?
I am a free thinker advocate. I talk a lot about, pro black stuff, basically enlightenment, understanding, how to help the communities, things of that nature. And I'm just really about opening people's mind and, doing a lot of research. And that's pretty much what I do.
Okay. And for that, and I understand that the podcast itself or the show itself every other day, you're trying to make it a full-time thing.
Right.
With that being an everyday, and I know the struggles of everyday content, which is difficult, maybe not so much in your case only because of what you're talking about, the content that you're discussing. Right. I could see that becoming an everyday podcast or show. Mm-hmm. But for sports and entertainment, I got to let you know, it is hard as hell to have an interview every Saturday, a Q&A session every Sunday, and 5 pieces of actually good content during the work week.
Right.
So what is the show, if you were to call it anything, what would you encompass your show as? And you just kind of answered that question, but some of the topics that you cover, what exactly are you talking about?
Well, basically, everybody knows me as Izzy or the Pro Black Atheist. So a lot of times we talk about politics. We talk about things that are happening in the black community. We talk about basically, relationships. We talk about pretty much everything. It's pretty wide varying if you, really just good entertainment. We take phone calls. We do a few interviews every once in a while, and it's just about bringing everybody good entertainment, but knowledge at the same time. So that's what we focus on. And a lot of people tend to get a little upset. and I have a lot of people that don't like the things that I say. I'm pretty controversial. So, it's all fun though. It's all fun, and it's about just enriching your mind, opening people's minds.
And when you say people get upset, and yes, I've watched plenty of the episodes. It's like people don't have, and I find this out a lot, that a lot of people, average Americans or average human beings rather, mm-hmm. just don't have the sense of mind to take what they're hearing and not get offended. That's the biggest thing is not taking offense. And I know you preach that too. I've heard it.
Right.
It's not taking offense. And when I was on your show for that brief stint, when you had me on through Skype, mm-hmm. A lot of people look at me and look as far as where I'm from. If they know nothing else about me, they automatically assume that I'm probably waving around an American flag and I have a red hat on with a stupid slogan on it. You know what I'm saying?
Right, definitely.
But a lot of people that do know me know that I have a daughter that is mixed. I have a black fiance. Like, I'm not trying to sit here and I'm not bragging when I'm saying this. I'm just stating facts that people just don't seem to understand.
Right.
So I understand a lot of, and how I grew up as well, I understand a lot of what you're discussing on your show. And that's why I wanted to come on through the Skype interview there, or the Skype line, because I wanted people, you were having, and it seemed like only people that were calling in, that mm-hmm. wanted to call in, were African American.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I wanted people to know, look, there is another there is another perspective from another race, and I wanted to get that out there. And I noticed all the comments actually that were flowing in through that episode as I was talking, and basically I guess in a lot of people's minds I was kind of white bashing.
Right.
And I was getting a lot of shit.
Right.
And I love it. I love it. I love getting shit through the comments because that shows you where America or the people watching your show as a whole are at mentally.
Right.
Ready to accept the fact that different races get along. And speaking of different races, and this is something I wanted to bring up real quick before we get into the next question. A lot of people say that Africa was the birthplace of civilization.
Right.
Okay, so what does that make us?
Everybody African, you know. I mean, we go really, really deep into that. And, you know, some people sometimes find it a little offensive on the way it's explained, but it's really just science. And a lot of people like to say, oh, well, you know, everybody comes from Africa. Well, everybody does come from Africa to a degree, you see, and we're kind of all the same to a degree. And I just point out the slight differences, but that doesn't mean that I'm bashing anybody else. And just like you said, you know, I have a lot of black collars, but I've been getting a few white collars, and I tend to have a few white collars that call a lot. And they are like, you know, pro-America and, you know, go back to Africa type guys. But, you know, they're open-minded and they're real and they believe what they say. So I don't really mind it. I just care about people, you know, being willing to listen to everything. So that's really the key of that.
And isn't it funny, and a lot of people out there that understand this, and not until yesterday's Q&A session have they really heard me go off about an issue of race or about like what I really think of Trump being the president and things like that. I went off on that Q&A session yesterday. So the thing is, I support your mission to spread actual knowledge 110%.
Great.
The thing is, isn't it sad that we're in a day and age where, and it wasn't ever really good. There was never any great to begin with for all races. But isn't it weird that you classify it and people would classify with you and clarify and agree with you when you say they're pro-America? And pro-America nowadays means racist? Like, isn't that terrible that it has to come to that?
Well, the thing is, you know, they're trying to say that patriotism is what we're after. We're about patriotism, you know, and that's just a cover for, you know, I'm going to be racist, you know, or they'll use words like nationalist, you know what I mean? And it's just like, look, we are, you know, I love my country. I love USA. You know, USA is a great place. You get to say whatever you want. But do not try to mask racism or bigotry or things of that nature with patriotism, because patriotism is about, you know, loving your rights, loving, you know, the things that you are given by God or whoever, if you want to believe in God,
right.
You know, but your government wants to give you, and that's, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to protest and to have different viewpoints and different ideals, you know. So there's a fine line between patriotism and racism, fascism, and bigotry, you know.
Right.
I find it funny, but at the same time, let's just be honest, we're in the age of quote unquote alternative facts. You know, so you know, it's surprising to me that people are closed-minded, but it really isn't very much. So, you know, I just like to expose it and show it for what it is.
Well, and I like, and before I get onto your app that you're trying to create there, which is something I really wanted to discuss with you today. Isn't it funny that a lot of people say that trends, and this is what people, and when I say people, I mean white America, is comfortable talking about trends in fashion or music that keep repeating themselves. And they're like, well, you know, history repeats itself. And that's what they think of, and they don't care to talk about everything. Well, as you said, we're in the age of alternative facts. And I know that was pretty damn funny. But yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. It's where America is starting as a whole, is starting to again plummet. and show that plummet. And it's not even plummet where it's in the news, but you don't necessarily feel it as a whole, as a country. It's starting to hit that plummet point where you can feel it every single day. No matter what race you are, you feel it because you're out in it. If you're out there, you know that right now, or you think you know, right now, you walk into a supermarket with other people of other races, and for some reason or another, they look at you, and you automatically can see in their mind that they are judging you based on whatever.
Right.
And it's normally race.
Absolutely.
So, and stereotypes. So for me, being a white male who has really not, and this is the thing, a lot of people only want to say that, and when I say a lot of people, everybody should know I'm talking about white America. When I say a lot of people say that poverty is only derived from Hispanic neighborhoods and black neighborhoods and all this other whatever. Yes, in a sense, like I don't agree with that, but what I was going to say was, in a sense, I didn't have ever that need to be like, oh my God, where's the money? What am I going to do? How financially are we stable as a family? I don't have any of that, but it's not to say that the family next to me didn't have the same problems. And, I just want people to understand that it is not just a racial bias problem. That is not where it exists, because I've seen plenty of white guys downtown Chicago, all homeless, hugging on the street corners and rattling their tin cans for cash.
Right.
I've seen plenty of that. So I know that it doesn't just exist in certain neighborhoods or certain whatever, because I've seen it on the north side of Chicago, right next to Wrigley Field, what's supposed to be a real nice area. Right. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I think people get a misunderstanding about what poverty and what certain, like, discrimination, unfortunately, helps that. Right. Discrimination helps that, because if you're refusing to, or you have something in your mind to refuse certain types of service, which people think that's dead and gone, but that's not true at all. But if you reserve the right to certain services away and exclude certain races, which seems to be minorities, what do you expect to happen?
Right.
Why do you expect riots? Why do you expect people to get mad? And I don't want to hear that bullshit. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't care who likes or doesn't like this interview. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm tired of people coming to me when I say something to support Black Lives Matter or a movement of that caliber.
Right.
And I'm chastised because I'm white defending that. And you should think about all the white people that die and all the murder that happens on that. And it's like, no. It's not even about that. I don't care. That's like the alternative facts. I don't give a shit what you have to say after the fact. I'm just laying out my venting of what is going on, the fact that I'm not okay with it. And that's how I feel. And if you have a problem with it, which most people do, you're going to come back at me pouting and crying like Trump about how it's not fair that you're not getting an upper hand in this conversation.
Right.
And that you only expect this from an African-American gentleman or a Hispanic gentleman or an Indian gentleman. But since a white guy is saying it, all of a sudden it makes it so egregious, like so much worse, because somebody that they believe is on their side is with what they consider the other side.
Right. I mean, that is so true. I mean, a lot of times we speak about this a lot. We talk about, white supremacy, and we talk about, white privilege, and a lot of people don't believe in it, and a lot of people don't understand it. And that's what we do. We try to get people to understand all of these things, because if you understand the country and what the country was built off of, the country, I mean, let's just be honest. The country was built for, quote unquote, the white man, the European, that came over here, and they started saying, you know what, we want this land and we want to do something with it. And they don't understand that there's a certain level of, what's the best way I can put it? There's a certain way of how the country has always worked. And because of the way that the country has worked, people seem to think, oh, well, there's no more racism. That was in, the early 1900s and the 1800s and the 1700s, and it's all dead, and we're post-racial. And I find that term very funny, because if anybody's paying attention, we're so not post-racial. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we break it all down, and we start from truly understanding, the plight of the black man first and foremost, of course, because I'm a black man, but this is all minorities. You see what I'm saying? And,
right.
and it does even include white people too, because a lot of people don't see that there are lower class, lower economic status white folks that are struggling just like black folks. And they don't understand that they're a part of this whole situation that we're going through too, because they were put in a situation just like black folks was put in a situation, just like Mexicans, just like Native Indigenous. All these people were put in a situation because of how the country looks at people and the way that they want to break it all down. Don't get me wrong. Capitalism is a great thing when it's done correctly, okay? But if you look at the breakdown of how everybody came up and how everybody has their advantages and non-advantages and things of that nature, then you can really see what other people are going through. And we love to break this down. And I don't know how much time we have on here, but there is an actual breakdown for all minority groups and why they're in the situation that they're in right now.
Now see, that I would probably say go and check out your Periscope channel for that.
Right.
Only
Definitely.
because, yes, we are on a limited time.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to say was that it looks like, a lot of people, and the funny thing is, and not funny, but when I was, let's see, 2017. So back in 2010, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
I was on, and I currently am, because of my bipolar disorder and to help out, pay the bills and help out, because I can't just rely on my fiance to pay all the bills.
Right.
So yes, I am being helped out a little bit with food stamps and with the link card and things like that, because it does help. It's not something that I think is a handout. No, I don't treat it like that. And no, neither would I ask for one. But at the same time, I know what my current situation is. I know what my financial situation is now always going to be. And whether I can make it better or not is dependent on me and who I ask and who I talk to. Mm-hmm. So when I was going through that, when my daughter was very little and just born, I was going and in unemployment lines. I was going and asking for the link card. I was going and talking to WIC offices. Mm-hmm. I was doing all this, what a lot of white America looks down on of other races and goes, oh, that's a handout. Oh, they don't need that really. They just don't want to fucking work. And I say is, guess what? I fucking did it. Right. I had to do it. And I hear people, when I was doing that, and I was at the store and they didn't know I was paying with a link card, they thought I was paying with a credit card. Mm-hmm. There were so many people, because there was a lady in line, I think paying with WIC coupons, I believe. Mm-hmm. And a guy behind me goes, man, can you believe it? I'm like, what? And he goes, that lady just asking for a fucking handout. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I just happened to look over because I was looking down at my phone. Mm-hmm. I happened to look over and it's a black lady.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, you mean her? And he goes, yeah. And he started getting louder about it. And he goes, yeah, because they're always looking for a handout. And the minute he said they're always looking, and I went, oh, so you mean black people? And she turned around. I said, oh, I'm sorry. This gentleman just thinks because you're black that you get handouts for WIC, even though I know what it's for and I have a child of my own, which I'm currently on WIC, and I'm paying today with my link card. And the guy was like, whoa, you didn't need to fucking get aggressive with me. And I said, listen, yes, I did. I said, the only way people like you learn anything is because you either, from your age group, from not yours, but his age group, an older age group on, you either got beat as a kid and learned a lesson, or you got yelled at and screamed at as a kid and learned a lesson. And I feel like that's what has to happen with an older generation.
Absolutely.
Like much older than myself.
Absolutely.
They don't seem to learn. And I know I was raised in a generation, not by my parents in particular, but I was raised by friends of mine, as far as I was in that generation where equality is key.
Right.
And that is, there's no, jokes are jokes. And yeah, people make jokes all the time. But I learned that, that's not right. All the jokes my either my father or whoever was making, or grandparents or whoever, family, if they make jokes, or my friends make jokes that are white, and all of them think it's funny, and I would laugh at those before really the real, like, where that hits, when that hits home with people.
Right.
And once I got into that mentality, that separate mentality, what I call the better mentality, when I got into that mentality, it really changed my outlook on my entire life. And like, wow, this is what I want to make sure that I never do, because if I grow up to be that old, calloused, blaming everything on everybody and making racist jokes at nighttime and not being able to say them to other friends, then yes, then I'm an asshole and I'm a guy who doesn't deserve to have friends.
Right.
One thing before we get out of here, your app that you're creating, what is it that you're trying to do?
So we're going to be putting out the same content that we have. We're just going to add on a little bit more. It's going to be like an every other day, but we're going to try to push it to every single day radio show. It will be call-in. It will be Skype. We'll have blogs on there. We'll have, some free ebooks every once in every month. We'll probably put up a couple free ebooks, couple prizes, things of that nature. It's just going to be an all-inclusive app, and hopefully, we'll get a lot of support. Now, real quick, I do want to let you know, you had made up a point real quick, and I just want to tell everybody, all your listeners, what you just said was a great story. And I want people to really understand what you said was some real shit. Because honestly, when welfare was made, it was not made for black folks. It was made for white folks. And when it was made for white folks, there was no problem. You can look this up. It's really well documented. Right around the 80s, when the whole welfare handout stuff started, it was because they marched a whole bunch of black folks in front of a TV, and they're all getting WIC and welfare and things of that nature. And, this is not about, race, because everybody gets welfare. There's a lot of people out there that get EBT, welfare, WIC, all these things. And people don't seem to get that. The 8 poorest cities in the United States are white Republican cities. They all receive benefits. So do black folks. Everybody needs welfare. This is not something that is a handout for anyone whatsoever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Absolutely not. It is something that is needed in order for people to make their lives better. And the last little point that I would like to say I think that it's not just about equality, because everybody can say we're all equal. I think it's about equity. And a lot of people need to understand the difference between those things. And
I know what you're saying, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into that. But, please look that up. Check that out. And check out my app. Check out my show. It's about every other day. Periscope. You just have to look me up on Periscope at Izzy 420 high, IZZY 420 HIGH. And you can find out about these things. You can ask about these things. If you don't agree with these things, we can talk. You can call in. We can have a small little debate. You know what I mean? And it's all about opening people's horizons, opening up their minds so they can see things in maybe a different way that they don't normally see it. You know what I mean? And we can all come to a common middle ground. And it's really, really important that we do this, and sometimes a lot of people are going to say, well, you sound super black and,
what is super black?
It's
right?
Like, because because they think that, oh yeah, you hate white people. I don't hate white people. I hate ignorance. I hate stupidity. I hate, racist behavior. I hate racist mindsets. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people get these mindsets from TV, Trump, the
family.
Family. You know what I mean? And all we need to do is open our minds. If we can open our minds and we can think as, we can all have our separate opinions, but is it that hard for us to meet somewhere in that middle and say, is it really that hard? I don't think it's that hard. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we have to concentrate on.
And again, you can catch me. I'm Pat Voss, the host of the Honesty Podcast vlog series on YouTube 5 days a week. The interview series here is every Saturday on patreon.com/honesty podcast. And of course, you can tweet me at Honesty Podcast on Twitter, as well as hear this on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Podbean every single Sunday for the Q&A. Thank you so much, Matt, or Izzy. Thank you so much for stopping by today for the interview series.
Thank you.
And definitely, guys, stick around for next Saturday. Every single week, great pieces of information, great pieces of content coming out to you guys. This has been another edition of Honesty Podcast. We'll catch you next Saturday.
Party like Chris Farley.